Hey graduates, as part of our virtual graduation ceremony, we have created these UWC Graduation social media stickers and folders to share on your Instagram and Facebook stories. It's as simple as clicking on your story, snap a pic or create a video, select the sticker icon, search for UWC Grad, select your GIF. Most importantly, tag UWC, use this year's hashtag and share. Let's not forget about these easy-to-apply UWC filters. Go to our UWC online profile. Click on our Filter tab. Select the Graduation Frame filter. Tap to find your faculty color. Snap a pic or create a video. Most importantly, tag UWC, use this year's hashtag, and share. Congratulations on your well-deserved success. We cannot wait to see your fun UWC virtual graduation moments.
There's a university at the tip of Africa that's right at the top of its game. It's a place with a proud history and legacy, pulled upwards by a future that will not be tamed.
It brims over with powerful ideas that again and again lead to potent action and real change. Since when? 6 decades long, it's been home to groundbreakers, change makers, planet shakers, and it's still going strong.
It's the home of forward-thinking higher learning, homegrown pride and a story still unfurling, independent thought which sparks innovation, mindful global citizens and their perpetual liberation.
Today, this is my home, my community, my springboard, my zone, like iron sharpening iron. Here, my potential is mined, my mind is refined, and my future redefined.
It's our time to learn from our past and our histories, to be the leaders of tomorrow's victories.
It's our time to stand up and step into our light.
To rise with Africa and all the world by our side.
I declare this graduation ceremony of the University of Western Cape duly constituted. Ndazisa ngasemthethweni lenhlangano ye-University yeNtshona Kapa. Ek verklaar hierdie vergadering van die Universiteit van Wes-Kaapland as behoorlik geconstitueer. Professor Pretoria's Rector and Vice-Chancellor, UWC academic staff and students, UWC graduates and their loved ones, guests, graduates of our university, I am privileged to address you today as we celebrate your academic achievements and welcome you as graduates of this fine institution. I congratulate both each of you and your families and loved ones who have supported you throughout your journey from a first-year student to where you are today. While we sadly cannot gather in the main hall for a traditional graduation ceremony, I hope that wherever you are, you and your loved ones will celebrate this important moment in your life's journey with as much joy and pride as if we were together in person. As we reach the end of 2021, instinctively we cast our minds back to evaluate and review what has happened in our lives and the world around us in the past months and years. It will be easy to describe 2021 as annus horribilis, or a horrible or terrible year. Indeed, there were many times in our country when it appeared that we were faltering and crippled as a society, and that our governmental and other institutions reflected this. Livelihoods are still being lost to the worst pandemic in a century. Families are still struggling to overcome the devastating consequences of losing loved ones to the coronavirus. And far too many of our compatriots refuse to believe that being vaccinated is nothing but a conspiracy to make us all sick. There has also been much cause for despair this year. The looting in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, a former president refusing to accept the consequences of his actions, and more recently, that so many of our fellow citizens just did not bother to go to the polls in local government elections. The results of either apathy, anger, or disillusionment with how our country is being run. A horrible year indeed. Moreover, 2022, 2023, and the years to come can be annus horribilis unless we create spaces for ourselves to strive for something better. The former American President Ronald Reagan, a man whom many mocked for being an actor turned politician, had something wise to say about the responsibility of keeping freedom alive. He said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same." So today I say to you, your generation has been handed the baton of keeping the fires of freedom alive. In times during which autocrats of all stripes, whether in Africa, Europe, or North America, threatened democracy, the task is more urgent than ever. And do not imagine that this noble task comes without a price.
You may not have to run the risks that your parents and your grandparents did. But as Chief Albert Luthuli, South Africa's first Nobel Peace Laureate, said, it is inevitable that in working for freedom, some individuals and some families must take the lead and suffer. After all these years of studying and sacrifice, it is understandable that you might say, no, fighting to keep and expand our freedoms is not part of your plan for the future. You might think that you can move on with your own life and career, that you carry enough responsibility of which to take care. But you can fulfill those and also contribute to the momentum for change. This you can do through the work that you do in your communities, living your lives with a strong moral compass and insisting that you want to hand over freedom to your children one day without it being as battered, bruised, and abused as it is today. As it has been said in Scripture, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness. South Africa needs a generation of warriors who will stand firm against the many injustices that happen every day in this beautiful country of ours. You can be one of them. By graduating today, you have already shown that you possess many qualities that will stand you in good stead. Determination, commitment, and resilience. These are all qualities required to bring about change for the better. As a generation of new leaders, I wish you great fortune as you step into a new chapter of your lives. I am proud of you and your achievement, and know you will proudly carry the name of UWC wherever you may go. Again, congratulations on graduating, and may our Creator bless each one of you as you fulfill your destiny in this, our land.
UWC graduates, their families and loved ones, the UWC campus community, and guests. This is the final graduation ceremony of 2021, and as we have done over the past 2 years, this event is a virtual ceremony. It is such a pity, even though we understand that the COVID-19 pandemic has made us change how we live. I really miss watching your proud, smiling faces as you are recognized for your academic achievements. Some of your predecessors even brought some fun into the Great Hall as they danced and ululated across the stage. I know that with time, we will return to some of our old traditions, and live graduation ceremonies will be one of them soon. Let me first congratulate you and your loved ones for making it to today. Many of you have had to overcome heavy burdens and challenges, some related to COVID-19 and other relating to different tragedies and obstacles. I'm sure that many of you have gotten through your days by nothing else but sheer will and determination. So I say, well done to all of you. We are so very proud of you, and we thank you for staying the course and continuing to believe in UWC. As we have lived with the pandemic for almost 2 years, I thought it would be a good time to reflect on the lessons that the COVID-19 pandemic have taught us. Here I'd like to focus on two qualities that have been so valuable. Number one, being open to change and responding to challenges with resilience. As you begin a new chapter of your lives, I want you to remember that even the most detailed strategy or plan can go wrong. At the beginning of 2020, the coronavirus was far away from UWC, and news reports showed an interesting picture of how China responded to the outbreak. At that stage, we thought we would have a straightforward academic year, and we were so wrong. Within 3 months, South Africa fundamentally changed and shut itself off from the rest of the world. Our university shut down too, and we quickly had to grapple with the challenges of sending students and staff home, devise new ways of continuing with our academic year, and creating support mechanisms to help everyone cope. They say that the only constant in life is change, and the pandemic brought this home like never before. You will find in life that sudden changes, maybe not on the scale of COVID-19, will come your way, and you need to be strong enough to manage them. This goes along with being open to change. Given the suddenness with which we had to adapt from a traditional university with face-to-face interaction to a fully online environment, we didn't have the luxury of sitting back and wondering what we needed to do. This was no intellectual exercise. It was all hands on deck in a very practical way. Our efforts worked because we knew that we could not risk sticking to the old, familiar way of doing things. Sometimes your instincts will tell you it's better to bury your head in the sand because it's safer. But embracing change can have unexpected and positive results. We've seen several interventions and inventions at UWC because our researchers applied their knowledge to assist in understanding COVID-19. For instance, Drs. Rian Mulder and Sunay Mulder van Staden invented a novel aerosol suction device to minimize the risk of infection to oral healthcare workers. Nuclear physicist Professor Nico Orke collaborated with international researchers to devise mathematical models of the evolution of the pandemic. The World Health Organization chose UWC's South African Bioinformatics Institute, or SANBI as we call it, as one of 3 regional reference laboratories dedicated to genome sequencing so that we can better develop vaccines and treatment programs that are tailored to Africans and eventually bring COVID-19 under control. UWC was also involved in the first South African SARS-CoV-2 genome sequencing. These are but a few examples of what our research community achieved and are prime examples of harnessing expertise in a changing environment. Secondly, there's the matter of resilience, something of which our 61-year-old institution has plenty. Resilience speaks to the ability to withstand challenges. It means digging deep when things are tough and finding an inner strength to support you. Students and staff were placed under enormous pressure during the pandemic. You experienced this yourselves, but we all had to persevere and navigate our changed lives. You will have many moments ahead when you are tempted to give up. But I urge you to remember these past 2 years, when it would have been very understandable if you had felt that studying had become too difficult. Still, you stood firm in your ambitions, and you are today rightfully celebrating the commitment that kept you going against great odds. I believe that you share the resilience, the determination and the pride that this university of ours embodies. And I know that these values will keep you going even in the face of great odds. We are proud of what you have achieved, and we know that you will continue making us proud as alumni of UWC. I wish you great success and good fortune as you enter this new chapter in your life's journey. Thank you.
By authority vested in me, I shall now admit the candidates who are presented to me and the candidates who were not able to attend this ceremony to degrees, diplomas, and certificates in the university.
The University of the Western Cape takes pleasure in awarding the University Gold Medal to Derek Joubert for his extraordinary contribution to the upliftment of the community through exceptional leadership, community involvement, and related activities.
Greetings to everyone. You know, I've been on this campus many times over the years, and I'd like to begin by telling you what happened on the very first visit, and that was in 1965. 56 years ago. I was doing a postgrad teacher's diploma at the University of Cape Town, and this campus, you know, established by the regime when they introduced apartheid into higher education, had only been running for a few years. A few classmates and I thought we'd like to come through and show solidarity with our fellow students, and we phoned up to ask for an appointment to meet the SRC. And we were told, sure, come next week, Tuesday at 3 o'clock, which we did. But when we arrived, we were met not by the SRC, but by the white rector. He said, sorry, classes ended at 2:30 and everyone's already gone home. He took us on a quick tour, gave us a mug of tea and sent us on our way. But not before we asked him if we'd heard that the only member of staff who was not white, Adam Small, the poet, had a staff room all to himself. So he took his tea break alone and not with his white colleagues. He said, yes, that is the case, in compliance with the law. And that was the Separate Amenities Act. And I'm sure I'm not the only one here who can remember the whites-only benches in the parks, the segregated buses and trains, the separate entrances at public buildings, etc. Later we found out that there was no SRC, and that the student body had not been informed of our visit. So that's how it began. Now I'd like to jump 20 years to 1985. The struggle for freedom was intensifying across the country, as was the state crackdown on protest, and times were tough and tense. I was running the Community Arts Project in Cape Town at the time, and we just staged a production of Ngugi's play about the life and times of Dedan Kimathi, the hero of the Mau Mau struggle against colonial oppression in Kenya. Like Mandela, Kimathi was caught, tried for treason and convicted. Unlike Mandela, who went to prison, Kimathi got the death sentence and was hanged. Well, we were asked if we would perform a short excerpt from the play on this campus at a rally to be held in support of the United Democratic Front, that umbrella body which brought together all those protest organizations in one unified opposition, and which played such a crucial role in the downfall of apartheid. Now, the main speaker was to be Trevor Manuel, but he was under banning orders at the time, which barred him from speaking publicly. And do you know that even our little play had caught the attention of the censorship board and we'd been banned from performing? But we said yes. And I took the actors through on the first day, on the day of the rally. I took them through early, which is just as well, because soon the entire campus came under siege. There were roadblocks and sirens and tear gas and armed police in Caspers all over the place. And overhead there were helicopters flying low and buzzing the crowd. But the rally went ahead. Trevor, we did our bit, there was a bit of music, and Trevor said, keep going, keep on marching, nothing can stop us now. And of course he was right, because although he himself was picked up sometime after that and then held in detention on and off for the next 3 years, in 1990 Mandela was released and went on to become our first democratically elected president, with Trevor Manuel as his internationally regarded Minister of Finance. So those are my two snapshots, and I hope you enjoyed them. In conclusion, I would like to say that I'm proud to be honored by this institution, which has played and is still playing such a pivotal role in the transformation of our country. Thank you very much for the award. It really means a lot to me, and I feel deeply honored. Thank you.
The University of the Western Cape takes pleasure in awarding the University Gold Medal to Abu Bakr Muhammad for his extraordinary contribution to the upliftment of the community through exceptional leadership, community involvement, and related activities.
Members of the Council and the Senate, distinguished scholars, graduates, ladies and gentlemen. With all the praise that is being heaped upon me, now I know what a pancake feels like when honey is poured over it. Standing before you today reminds me of an event that occurred some 46 years ago, in 1976 precisely, when I was a guest speaker at the graduation at Wits University. It was then an all-white university, and of course the audience were white as well. And there I was, as brown as a pancake, standing before this, somewhat intimidated. And I said, or reminded them of an event of a lady leaning against the rails of a ship sailing the high seas, and a freak wave caused her to fall overboard, and seconds later a person dived in. There was a brief struggle, and then eventually a life belt was thrown and the two persons were hauled aboard. To the amazement of the passengers and the crew, this man turned out to be an old man. So that evening they gave him a party, and after dinner they shouted, "Speech, speech." So the old man slowly got up, surveyed the crowd, and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, there's just one question I would like to ask you. Who pushed me?" Today, I feel the same, that I've been pushed into the deep end by some anonymous nominator. However, deep ends are associated with deep thoughts, and I would like to share with you some of these thoughts. It is said by a wise man that there are two most important days in the life of every human being: the day he was born and the day when he realizes why he was born. Fortunate is he who realizes this early, miserable is he who realizes this late in life. But in this realization, we come to know that there are only two pathways before us: the path of selfishness or the path of selflessness. If we pursue the path of selfishness, we find ourselves trapped in darkness, in misery, and in unhappiness. But if we pursue the path of selflessness, we find ourselves in a bright light, in expansion, in growing, in prosperity, and in this way we find the purpose of life itself. This purpose has been very well said when the angels asked the Almighty, "You created the human being. What will be his greatest weakness?" The Almighty said his greatest weakness will be that he will pursue wealth at the expense of his health. And thereafter he will try to regain his health at the expense of his wealth. And in doing so, he'll be so attached to the past and so concerned of the future that he will not live in the present. And he will live as if he will never die, and he will die as if he never lived. So to you graduates, I say to you, choose the path of selflessness, because in this path you will be assured of happiness as sure as the sun will rise tomorrow. I take this opportunity to thank the university, the Senate and the Council for conferring this honor upon me, for recognizing the deeds, and at the same time I'm humbled by this very august, internationally recognized institution. Thank you.
The University of the Western Cape takes pleasure in awarding the University Gold Medal to Peter Takelo for his extraordinary contribution to the upliftment of the community through exceptional leadership, community involvement, and related activities.
Good day, my name is Peter Takelo. I'm staying in a beautiful place called Berrydale. I was working for 18 years with mentally challenged children in Cape Town. And through working with them, it really gave me the opportunity to work with our children here in Berrydale. Those who are traumatized, those who have emotional traumatized, those who are bullied. I was able to work with all of them. And if I can reflect back on the time where we started the program in 2001, it started in the dusty roads of Berrydale. And for me to see these young people that really are grow up now as adults, then I look at myself and say, Peter, you have done a good job. During that time, our first holiday program was at the school called Lemunsu. And we didn't have much money really to feed these kids proper food. And the only food that we could afford, it was mealies and bone. And brown bread for the whole week. And I was a little bit scared to if the children wanted to come and ask, are there not other meal? But these kids were hungry for learn. And they didn't mind about the food that they eat. And there was so much children that really have come through Netverpret. Children that have degrees now. And children that we thought one actually will make it, they have made it through. And we also have the program called the Project Hope. Project Hope is the children that give up on school, and we take them in and we give them some tasks to do, and they could really excel in the things that they really have done. During the COVID time, we didn't sit still. We was also thinking about how can we as an organization help the people in the community. And we have started thinking of a community garden, community vegetable gardens, where the people have to start planting their own veggies. We're starting at a camp called the Gwari camp. They call the Pluckers camp, the Gwari Pluckers camp, where we have really encouraged them to plant their own veggies, because we also live as people here in Netverpret. It doesn't matter where you stay. You can still change your surroundings where you are. And from there, these people were so proud of the gardens where they are, and to show us, always they show us that their veggies that they harvest at the end of the year. And they tell us actually that we are an organization that that are not focused only on the children, but also focus on the community outside and the people outside. And we're also now busy with a health program that where people we want to teach people how to eat healthy and not, like I said, the wrong way to cook food. And that will also be a program that we really want to be continuous, because at the end, they were also taught their children how to eat healthy. If the mother makes healthy food, the children will also eat healthy. Our cultural programs stand out about our real dance. You know, our real dance is our marketing tool. Wherever we go and wherever we dance, people talk about net verpret real dances. And that is where we really connect also with our forefathers. And if they dance, man, you know, sometimes they can't stop. And we're also busy learning a couple of words in the language, the Khoikhoi language, where they can learn. But real dance is a real dance. And they love it. I'm super duper excited as the guy that's working in the community. For me, it was a great privilege. It was for me a great honor to receive a golden medal award from the UWC, and I'm so much blessed. I'm feeling so humble. I'm feeling good. Thank you so much for the award, Peter Takilu, from the beautiful town of Berrydale.
Citation on the PhD thesis of Madhu Musa Bassi. Dr. Bassi's thesis is entitled Multilingual Teacher Talk in Secondary School Classrooms in Yola, Northeast Nigeria, exploring the interface of language and knowledge using legitimation code theory and terminology theory. The thesis does two novel things to produce novel insight. It draws on two bodies of knowledge whose interfaces have been seldom explored to uniquely interrogate the prevailing orthodoxy around a correlation between language choice and knowledge type in multilingual teacher talk. The findings, including the visualization of lesson transcripts, help us to understand in new ways the dynamics as well as the limitations of language in claimed affordances of multilingual teaching.
PhD thesis by Tapiwa Gandiwa was titled The Use of Information and Communication Technologies for Accessing HIV/AIDS Information by Health Workers in Zimbabwe. ICTs can play a crucial role in improving access to HIV/AIDS information and in coordinating HIV/AIDS prevention activities and treatment. The development of ICTs in Zimbabwe's health sector has been random and uncoordinated. A multiple case study strategy involving 181 Zimbabwean healthcare professionals and IT administrators was employed to determine information needs and current information technologies used. Incorporating identified needs and preferences open source software, a content management system, and a set of information system design principles, a framework for establishing a web-based information access platform was developed. The platform will contribute to reduce duplication of effort, improve information storage, access and sharing, enhance performance analysis, reduce medical errors, as well as improve patient treatment and care.
The election of Israel and of the Church to be God's chosen people for the sake of all nations is a core theme in Judaism and Christianity. This claim is subject to many distortions and controversies, especially wherever this becomes exclusivist. In this study, André Potgieter describes historical examples of such exclusivist claims, including the British Israel movement, American notions of our manifest destiny, the Afrikaner people, and Nazi notions of being a Herrenvolk. Going against the grain, he also investigates whether such exclusivist claims can also be found amongst exponents of North American Black and Pan-African theologies. He shows that such claims can indeed be found, explains how this is prompted by the need to affirm the dignity of African people under colonial conditions, but also notes where and to what extent such claims do become exclusivist.
Chancellor, I will now introduce the candidate Hella Sophie Charlotte Shah-Siepen. The thesis of the candidate is titled Southern African Human Remains as Property, Physical Anthropology and the Production of Racial Capital in Austria. This is a major contribution to the study of social networks, institutional infrastructures, and individual incentives that were important to colonial knowledge production. It considers early field expeditions and efforts at collecting within the violent history of an extractive colonialism, showing how these contributed to making colonial epistemologies. This is an original study of the violence of physical anthropology and of the founding of anthropology as a discipline in Austria. It shows how value was created through the extraction of objects, artifacts, and the remains of people, and through their shipment to the centers of calculation in colonial empires. This study argues that any analysis of how humans and artifacts became epistemic objects needs to show how these were turned into social, economic, and political capital, considered within a wider cultural politics of settler colonialism in Southern Africa.
Abigail Wies's PhD dissertation, Ach Shame, Siehst doch, Sorry, Tracing Shame's Affect Through Performance in Post-Apartheid South Africa, engages with a set of inquiries that address her own place as a serious member of the arts and performance community in South Africa. I hope that it's not necessary to describe the significance of the arts of resistance in the construction of an anti-apartheid culture over the past several decades. South African theatre arts in particular had a profound place in shifting attitudes, expectations, and aspirations of South Africans who began to imagine the circumstances of living in a country beyond the violence of race. Wiese develops a distinct inquiry that draws together a critical engagement of her experiences as a theatre goer, on one hand, and a theoretical and intellectual exploration of the field of affect theory within cultural studies. In other words, Visa watches herself watching and undertakes a keenly informed theatrical analysis of how and why she is emotionally moved by the performances before her. Her project is described by one examiner as an autoethnography. Visa situates herself as a white subject and scrutinizes her responses to theatrical works that confront and trouble the conventional situation of the theatre-goer seeking tantalizing but ultimately easeful entertainment or engagement. The analysis gives oblique and often strikingly original insights into the anguished history of a divided South African society. The method is distinctive, and it asserts a strong commitment to engaging with the aesthetic as a realm of analysis and inquiry. An examiner notes, this doctoral thesis is very original and makes a distinct contribution to knowledge of and insight into affect studies and performance studies. This thesis should certainly be published. Visa, in fact, had two substantial outputs during the course of her PhD studies, having given birth to a young son, Jack, during her second year of study. I commend her on a fine dissertation and a fine lad. Given the brutal circumstances of COVID in the past 2 years, the completion of this dissertation is a substantial achievement.
I am Professor Felix Banda. I'm going to read a doctoral citation for Charmaine Witbooi, titled A Sociolinguistic and Multisemiotic Analysis of Mobility and Identities in Hamburg, Half Bay. The aim of the study was to show how the people of Hamburg, their language practices, cultural and other semiotic materials are represented in the virtual and physical linguistic landscapes. She uses critical multimodal analysis and notions of resemiotization and remediation to capture and understand the social ideological construction of the people of Hamburg through a network of verbal language and images in the virtual and physical landscapes. Ms. Witboi's study shows complex local-level experiences of socioeconomic exclusion and denial of citizenship, leading to contestations reflected in protests, gentrifications, evictions, xenophobia, unresolved race troubles, and segregation. The implications of these contestations provide interesting insights into emergent reconstructions of race and a complex blend of old and new forms of inequalities and segregation in post-apartheid South Africa. The study contributes to extending the social semiotic theory to multimodality and also has implications for transformative and inclusive urban housing planning and policy. Thank you very much.
The title of Peter Ibikunle's thesis was The Development of an Instrument to Assess Return to Work Among Post-Stroke Survivors. Return to work after an illness is influenced by physical, psychological, and social factors. Peter Ibikunle developed a contextualized, multi-perspective instrument to determine the return to work post-stroke. The study also evaluated what the physical and psychosocial factors of return to work of post-stroke survivors were. As part of the thesis, the student constructed a conceptual understanding of return to work together with post-stroke survivors, caregivers, employers, and rehabilitation professionals. impairment and functional limitations, cognitive and psychological limitations, barriers and facilitators to return to work, as well as stroke as a social responsibility, emerged as themes from engagement with the stakeholders. The valid and reliable return to work assessment scale can be used as a measure of return to work among stroke survivors.
Chancellor, the candidate Ronald Marsh will now be introduced. The thesis of the candidate is titled Development of Framework to Align the Undergraduate Dental Curriculum at UWC to the AfriMed's Competency Framework. The African Medical Education Directions for Specialists Core Competency Framework guides the accreditation process of all medical and dental schools in South Africa. This unique study developed a framework to align the undergraduate dental curriculum at a South African dental school to the AfriMed's Competency Framework. Curriculum mapping, focus group discussions, a systematic review, and document analysis was used to develop the proposed framework. Findings from the Delphi study confirmed the feasibility of this framework. As there is limited published literature or guiding principles for the South African undergraduate dental curriculum and its alignment to the AfriMed's Competency Framework, this study contributes significantly to new knowledge in the field.
Chancellor, the candidate Hazel Nasipi Moya will now be introduced. The thesis of the candidate is entitled The Negotiated Nation, Evaluating Nation Building in Post-Apartheid South Africa. The student evaluated nation building in post-apartheid South Africa. The thesis drew on modernist theories of multicultural and civic nationalism to construct an analytical framework. It distinguished between banal nation building, which includes symbols such as Nelson Mandela as the father of the nation, the constitution, the flag, the national anthem, sports and restorative justice, and radical nation building, which includes political, social, and economic reforms. The thesis finds that nation building has been successful at a symbolic level and through the extension of political and other rights. Despite these successes, substantial issues remain around a racially polarized economy, restorative justice, and fully incorporating the previously marginalized majority into national life.
The study analyzed the Statistics South Africa 2000 and 2010 time use survey data to examine time use patterns, time poverty, and relationship between time poverty and income poverty in South Africa. The empirical findings indicated that mean production time increased, particularly time spent on household maintenance and labor market work activities, while the survey participants spent more than 50% of their time on personal care. The study also found that time-poor individuals were predominantly Africans living in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, coming from households with at least 4 members. Lastly, the proportion of people who were both income and time-poor decreased from 58% to 32% during the 10-year period.
Chancellor, The candidate Joshua Olaniyi Olabiyi will now be introduced. The thesis of the candidate is titled Assessment of the Efficacy of the Mechanisms for Conflict Resolution in Employment Relations at a Multinational Company in Nigeria. Lessons from South Africa. The candidate's research undertook a novel investigation of variables, that is, multinational enterprises and conflict resolution in employment relations, that have not ordinarily been considered alongside each other. His research looked at a multinational enterprise in two countries, Nigeria and South Africa. Employing a non-experimental mixed methodology, he collected and analyzed data to assess how this multinational enterprise resolves employment relations conflicts that arise in the course of doing business in its host environment. He found intriguing differences in the conflict resolution processes employed by the MNE in these two countries. Based on these findings, he made some recommendations of strategies for multinational enterprises to consider when they take up residence in these two countries in particular, and in Africa in general.
Chancellor, the candidate Emmanuel Bongesule will now be introduced. The thesis of the candidate is titled The Politics of Inclusive Business Models in Agricultural Investment, the case of sugarcane production in Kilombero, Tanzania. Emmanuel Sule's doctoral research on the Kilombero Sugar Company in Tanzania presents an emblematic case of the asymmetric articulation of globalized transnational agrarian capital with smallholder outgrowers in African agriculture. Deploying agrarian political economy and sustainable rural livelihoods, and with extensive field research, he shows how integrating smallholders into markets exposes agrarian populations to new pressures as risks are shifted. This inclusive business model has produced social differentiation, leading to the consolidation of assets among the better off and exacerbating land inequality, deflecting from the core challenges arising from the privatization of public agricultural services and the long-range outcomes of neoliberal reforms under structural adjustment. Sule's interrogation of orthodox development narratives makes an original contribution to critical agrarian studies.
Chabinga's study investigated the role and use of multimodal imaging technologies, specifically the ZUPED computer tablets, for teaching and learning in 3 grade 6 English second language classrooms in northern Zambia. Through the lens of the input hypothesis and affordances theories, it explored language and literacy practices, as well as opportunities and hindrances that were experienced by teachers and learners when using ZUPEDs in English second language classrooms. This study made use of a questionnaire, individual and focus group interviews, and classroom observations to collect data. The findings of the study indicate that the ZUPED tablets are good instructional and mediation tools that facilitate self-directed learning, which is crucial for learners' literacy development. The study is an invaluable contribution to the body of knowledge on the use of technology for literacy development in a second language.
This study aimed at determining the effectiveness of a combined dialogical argumentation instructional method and the assessment for learning model, strategies that were used in enhancing tertiary and vocational education and training students' conceptions of selected scientific topics The findings showed that DAFLIM improved the students' conceptions and showed to be a more effective scaffolding pedagogical method to create a teaching learning discussion space. All the examiners agreed that the thesis is original, novel, and makes excellent contribution to knowledge with respect to curricular development and education. The candidate has also demonstrated considerable understanding and provided brilliant insight into socio-cultural themes.
This study drew on the social constructivist theory and the cultural historical activity theory to gain insights into how idioms as linguistic and cultural tools could be used to enhance grade 3 learners' creative writing in isiXhosa. Following an exploratory multi-case study design, Ms. Nondalana developed materials with isiXhosa idioms that were used by grade 3 teachers to scaffold learners' creative writing. The key findings of this study reveal that isiXhosa idioms enrich learners' vocabulary and foster critical thinking, problem solving, language fluency, and other literacy skills. This study has contributed to fresh knowledge on innovative pedagogies that could enhance foundation phase learners' creative writing skills. It provides invaluable insights into the educational value of idioms in fostering African epistemology that could help resolve the persisting literacy crisis in early childhood education.
Graphs of integral distances and their odd properties by Oliver Habineza. Oliver Habineza joined a swath of mathematicians whose enterprise is to consider integral distances and their ramifications on metric spaces, a long-standing problem dating as far back as the Pythagoreans. In his case, he was considering integral distances emanating from inner products defined on vectors of finite fields. In particular, he was determining the strong regularity of graphs of integral distances, a conjecture posed a few decades ago. In a sustained tour de force, he completely solved the problem. In the course, it became apparent that the graph of integral distances on finite fields is a direct sum of graphs which constitutes a basis of graphs that form a complete Boolean algebra. Further, he determined completely the automorphism groups of these atomic graphs that are the foundations of the said complete Boolean algebra of graphs.
In his thesis, Mr. Takalani Marubeni has created a new sample of powerful high redshift radio galaxies in the southern sky. He combined an existing radio galaxy survey with 2 optical galaxy surveys in order to determine the redshifts for 250 radio galaxies covering 150 square degrees. Then he used stellar population models in order to produce estimates of the stellar masses and the star formation rates of these radio galaxies. On the basis of this work, a paper led by Mr. Marubeni was published in the top international journal, Monthly Notices of the Royal Astronomical Society. Mr. Marubeni's new catalogue will be useful for further analysis of radio galaxies, using the South African Meerkat and other radio telescope arrays. Well done, Takalani.
PhD graduation citation for Siyabonga Basil Ndluli, Department of Chemistry, Supervisor Professor Emmanuel Iwoha, Co-Supervisors Dr. Vivian John Denk and Professor Kwena Modibani. This is titled Polythiophene Propylene Imine Dendritic Star Copolymer Bulk Heterojunction Organic Photovoltaic Cells. Solar cell is attracting a lot of attention as one of the renewable and carbon-free energy sources as the world seeks ways of combating climate change and its consequences. However, the reliance on high-purity crystalline silicon makes commercial solar cell panels very expensive. Organic solar cells, which exploit polymer photovoltaic properties for solar cell development, have shown much promise. In his PhD work, Mr. Ndluli developed next-generation organic solar cell devices by harnessing the plastic electronics and the photovoltaics of novel polythiophene propylene imine dendritic star copolymer materials, which he designed. The organic solar cells he produced exhibited high power conversion efficiencies. Mr. Siyabonga Ndluli performed aspects of his study at the SINTEF Institute in Oslo, Norway.
Artin Introgo's PhD thesis is titled Evaluation of the Capacity of Hydrogen Sulfide to Reduce Infection of Maize by Aspergillus flavus. Hydrogen sulfide is a gas which at low concentrations serves as a signaling molecule that regulates development and growth. In a phase of such discovery, Ms. Ndlogo successfully demonstrated that provision of hydrogen sulfide to plants at up to 1 millimolar prevents infection of maize by A-flowers. She further demonstrated a clear link between this protection and the regulation of accumulation of reactive oxygen species via antioxidant enzyme activities. This thesis provides compelling evidence that hydrogen sulfide can be used as an antifungal agent in crops. This has major implications for food security, because maize is an important crop globally, and aspergillosis, which is a disease caused by ingestion of food contaminated with A-flowers, is a major health risk.
Mr. Zama used a case study and mixed methods to design a citizen science framework to operationalize resource-directed measures. The framework was motivated by global need to involve citizen scientists in water resource protection activities. Reliable primary and historic data were used to assess compliance of citizen scientist involvement with established numerical limits of resource-directed measures. Results showed that scientific studies on resource-directed measures practically involved citizens in protection of water resources. Novelty of the study is in two folds. First, the scientific value on data collected by scientists and citizens validated the compliance with the numerical limits of established resource-directed measures. Second, all publications in scientific and international journals were prepared and submitted, and one is already published. The conclusion is that the developed citizen science framework provided evidence-based role of citizens on policy implementation for water resource protection.
Pabalelo Radingwana was under the supervision of myself, Prof. Timothy Dube, and Prof. Dominic Mazumavi. Her PhD focused on grey water reuse and assessment of health and nutritional quality of home garden produce in rural South Africa. In this thesis, the health and nutritional quality of home garden produce using grey water in rural South Africa was examined. Heavy metals, contamination of soil, and nutritional quality of produce were measured using established soil quality and nutritional quality criteria. And the results showed that grey water can be a useful resource for irrigation, particularly in water-limited environments. The quality of grey water was found to meet irrigation standards. However, it was realized that prolonged use is therefore not recommended unless coupled with the use of fresh water. Based on the findings of the study, grey water can be a valuable tool for promoting food security, thus helping to achieve sustainable development goals, particularly goal number 1 on no poverty and goal number 2 on alleviating or ensuring zero hunger, particularly in the water scarce environments. I thank you.
Ms. Tahir commenced her PhD studies in January 2017. Her research focused on the dehydrogenation of propane to propylene. She synthesized nickel-based catalyst and investigated the effect of supports, sulfiding agents, and zinc addition on their activity and selectivity in propane dehydrogenation. It was observed that magnesium aluminate is a better support than silica, and sulfiding with dimethyl sulfoxide leads to better selectivity towards propylene. Adding zinc to nickel generates a zinc-nickel system that is better than the nickel-only catalyst at dehydrogenating propane. However, sulfiding of the zinc-nickel system leads to formation of zinc sulfide and nickel sulfides with no appreciable enhancement in propylene selectivity when compared to unpromoted sulfided nickel catalyst. Her research has been presented at national and international conferences and published in peer-reviewed scientific journals.
Chair, allow me to provide a short citation for the PhD work by Humphrey Khabo Tamaga, who was under the supervision of myself, Prof. Timothy Dube, and Dr. Gleta Shoko. His work focused on assessing the impact of land use and land cover changes on wetland productivity and hydrological systems in the Limpopo Transboundary River Basin, South Africa. In this study, the impact of environmental changes and human-caused land use activities on an unprotected small wetland ecosystem was studied. These changes damage the functions of wetland ecosystem which support the nearby communities. Satellite data combining species diversity, productivity, water presence, and land use and land cover proxies were used in conjunction with machine learning techniques. In this thesis, it was shown that remote sensing technologies can be used to monitor wetland ecosystems, species diversity, productivity, and degradation predictions in near real time, and the findings from this thesis contribute to the advancement of wetland management, and the results of this thesis can be used for the development of tailor-made wetland management strategies and rehabilitation frameworks. Thank you.
Nicole Thomas's PhD thesis examined the population of supermassive black holes and their observable properties predicted in the SIMBA galaxy formation supercomputer simulations. SIMBA's novel implementations for black hole growth and associated energy release makes it a unique platform for studying actively accreting supermassive black holes, known as active galactic nuclei, or AGN. Understanding AGN and the relationship to their host galaxies is a primary focus of the MIGHTY Key project on South Africa's Meerkat radio telescope. Nicole's world-leading thesis sets the stage for interpreting upcoming data from MIGHTY within the context of state-of-the-art galaxy evolution models in order to better understand how black holes and their host galaxies grow and change over time.
Chancellor, the candidate Tandiwe Crystal Tutito will now be introduced. The thesis of the candidate is titled Properties of Electrospun Biodegradable and Synthetic Waste Polymers and their Functionalization for Copper Adsorption. Electrospun nanofibers were made from waste black soldier fly chitosan biomass, and they were ideal for dry single-use biodegradable fabric with excellent water solubility. Polyethylene terephthalate from waste plastic bottles was blended with the chitosan produced from the waste black soldier fly, and it produced a more durable, non-woven textile than chitosan nanofibers by themselves. Metal ions in an aqueous solution could be removed from water using waste PET or PET with silica-supported 2-amino-methylpyridine nanofibers and achieved 89% or 96% copper adsorption capacity respectively. Additionally, the chelating ligand 2-octyl pyrazole pyridine was grafted onto PET and waste PET, and it achieved 88% and 90% of copper adsorption capacity respectively. All modified nanofibers reached adsorption equilibrium at 1 minute contact time. They could be regenerated and reused for at least 5 adsorption reuse cycles. Thank you.
PhD graduation citation for Sodiq Tolulope Yusuf, Department of Chemistry, Supervisor, Professor Emmanuel Iwoha. Thesis title, Transition Method Substituted Kestrite Structured Materials for Planar Heterojunction Architecture Solar Cells. Kestrites have emerged as very promising non-silicon materials for the development of solar cells. This is mainly due to their photovoltaic power conversion efficiency being comparable to that of silicon. Despite rapid developments in kestrel solar cell science and technology, achieving precise control over their stability remains a challenge. Sodiq Yusuf addressed the kestrel stability challenge in his PhD thesis. He designed a series of novel transition metal chalcogenide kestrel materials that exhibited excellent optoelectronic and photovoltaic properties and used them to produce high-efficiency planar heterojunction solar cells. UAB Modenius E Technologios at Vilnius, Lithuania, collaborated in the research project.
you.